Yeah, let's go for it. I'm quite excited to see this. I mean, I've
Oh,
not worked in Power Virtual Agents for a good year. So I mean, I'm interested to see what's changed, what's new, and what you're about to do, to be honest.
okay, cool, cool. Well, that's building it up, and I'll now butcher it. I will say, as with everything, I approach these demos as a citizen developer, as a maker. We never approach them as a sales principle for Microsoft. You know, we're obviously we hope to try and be balanced in what we show, but this is the reality that I'm going to share with you from the launches that you see from Microsoft to how hopefully it'll land for you, because we like to sort of try and resonate as a member of the community. And what I show you, there will be other opportunities that you can exploit. There'll be ways that you can get at these things in a different way, but hopefully I'll give you a very real experience to take away and just think about a little bit. At that point, Connor, that you've not touched Power Virtual Agents for some time, I can see a few people have joined in the chat. Who in chat works at all with Power Virtual Agents or has played with them? Just love to hear who
It's a
kind of
very kind of niche service, isn't it? You
Oh,
need a desire to be able to use it.
it's
Whereas
interesting,
Power
yeah.
Automate and Power Apps and Power BI, you can use them for a lot of things. Power Virtual Agents really does kind of, for me, it solves one specific aspect of where you'd be in terms of needing it as a business. So yeah, I mean, I can imagine that not many people have even actually heard of it, let alone used it.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you look at the sales blurb from Microsoft around the Power Platform, it is a Power Platform component. It is one of their core services. But you're absolutely right, Connor. You said to me, John, let's build a knowledge base. I'd think probably Power Apps, SharePoint, maybe Dataverse, maybe. I wouldn't instantly think of Power Virtual Agents. If you said, John, I want maybe a customer service bot, I might think about it, but I'd be worried about costs. But yeah, I think you're right. And Wayne said he experimented a little bit. There's a few people just just typing in now. It's not something I really explored too much until we did the vacation booking app. But this, so let me dig into it. I'll just share my screen because it all came from an event that I attended last week. And again, I'd just be really interested if anybody else attended what they called the Business Applications Launch event. Now, really stripped down, there are the two waves of Dynamics and Power Platform new service releases, or the updates, if you like, the two waves that they tend to advertise every year. Seems to go in these 6 monthly cycles. That seems to have been a thing for a while. You can see it on the roadmaps. And if you're interested in keeping abreast of what's coming from Microsoft, I will post a link in a little bit about how we think about new from Microsoft, what we go and try and digest. But they have this event and they had it. You can watch it on demand if you want. I'll just pop this link in actually. And if there is interest, we'll do a little watch party on it, which might be quite cool. Let me just find the right screen to pop that in. Always find it a bit difficult when I'm screen sharing to know which window to pop it in. There we go. We're over here in chat. So I went to this event and they were talking about a lot of the new innovations, and you see this here. They were talking about AI a lot, as you'd expect. It's like it is the topic of the time. But they came on to Power Virtual Agents and began talking about the way that Power Virtual Agents now they use this word infusing with AI, which I found really intriguing. And then I saw a demo that just made me go, what? No, really? That can't work like that. So I've gone and explored. Now, I guess the caveat to this, the way I explore may not be the way you explore. You may have different opportunities open to you, depending where your tenant resides, depending on the release pathways that you've got. But I tried to think about, I've seen something on the screen with Microsoft. How can I go and explore in the easiest way possible? And I happened across, this has been here for a while, but an opportunity that, again, big caveat, if you're able to do this, then that's great. Not everybody will be able to, but trying to find ways that I could go and explore to share with you, and equally ways that you might be able to go and explore some of these new features that are coming up. And this kind of stands alone in itself. This has been there for a little while now. The idea that you not only now have what's called the Microsoft Developer License for Microsoft 365, where you can basically get a free tenant to go and play with. We do it all the time. And I don't know, Connor, if you could just pop the link in at some point for that developer program. We've now got inside our own tenants. You probably have to speak to your tenant admin, or at least your Power Platform admin, to do this. But we've got the ability to create what's called developer environments inside our own tenant enclave, if you like. So what you're seeing here is an E3 license. Thank you, Connor. And for us as Cloud 365, when we join the organization, we'll tend to get access to what most people have got, the developer environment, the default environment there. But we have this newish opportunity. I say newish, I think it's probably about 6 months old now. Could be wrong, but around that level. If you want to onboard somebody to your environment, to your tenant, and you want to give them a safe place to play, to experience what's on offer with the Power Platform, but not to interact with your licenses so much, or like me, you want to go and tinker with a new release, these are fantastic. Quick straw poll as I start to do the demo. Please pop into chat if you use developer environments right now, because I'd love to hear what the use cases are for them. But I'll just show you how you get to them, basically. So by default, we all get a default environment to play with. But yeah, so Valerie, that's what I think, that they're really useful to go and learn stuff in the domain of your tenant. So dead easy. Wayne Newsman as well. Yes.
Just a question. So what are the kind of big differences between the sandbox environments? Because I mean, I know that I always jump for a sandbox environment if I'm testing and building things that I'm not planning on actually using. So what's the difference between the developer environment and the sandbox environment?
It's a really good question.
Environment for that matter.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, Connor. And so the simplest answer to that for me is that if you think about the types of environment you can have here, if you think about perhaps the progression of your average piece of software from ideas space to let's get this tested with all our other application space to let's make this live, you'll typically, in the older world, probably see that people will start in a default environment or something like that, or maybe even start in their own developer tenant. I don't know, depends how clever they are. Then they'll start to put different products and services together in what's called the sandbox, which is really, it's a play place for you and me and anybody else to go and test our applications together. So I think of the sandbox, in my mind anyway, at least, as almost like an integration place, which is still development, if that makes sense, on a stage in your life cycle. Production's where your product goes to be used. You don't tinker in production, typically in an application lifecycle process. But to my knowledge until now, the idea of having Connor's own safe space, to your point, was probably the sandbox. Probably you might pop in there, you might play around a bit, you might have used the default environment and just, or we might have set Connor up a sandbox for just Connor. But the idea of a sandbox is just that it's got a lot of integration and it's got a lot of capability for you to do different things within the remit of your license as it currently stands. Whereas developer, this thing I'm going to show you now, sits outside your license as far as I can be concerned with it. It exists as a place that's kind of safe and temporary and away just for you. Does that make sense?
It does.
Ish.
Yes. So does that mean that between the different environment types, there are limitations then as to what you can and can't do with them?
I would say there'll be, I mean, again, this is very much my experience. There will be constraints that you can set. I think it's just typical usage patterns of things like sandboxes and production. You wouldn't be, for example, you'd be given certain permissions and roles on production, which will constrain what you can do on production. That's not to say you couldn't lay them all out exactly the same. I think just your practice and your principle will say, in a sandbox, Connor and John can add and delete flows, for example. can create solutions, but what you might choose to do is you might limit some of our other capabilities, like deleting someone else's application, for example. You might limit it that way. Out of the box, it's a very good question, though, Connor. I don't know what the guardrails are for each of those out of the box, if that makes sense. However, that said, the developer environment is a place where you can go largely unfettered and play. And it's quite a new thing. So just to take you through what that looks like, you can give it whatever name you fancy. The one thing I will say is that the US, so in terms of region, that is important. The US seems to get preview features, newer features sooner than the European domains. So I always tend to choose United States. And you'll notice here that when I click developer, I get a few other options. And this is the really nice thing, is that if you're thinking of onboarding somebody who's relatively new to the Power Platform, this is great. I can create an environment for someone to go and experiment with, but still be the owner of it, and assign people to that environment and know that we've got some control there. But to my knowledge, what we're not doing there is we're not exposing our existing licensing position to you know, a per app flow running, sorry, a per app license being consumed, or a per flow license being consumed. It's just a developer license that's taking place, and it can do these things under the remit of the developer license. But I can take ownership. By default, you get a Dataverse store, as it says there, and that's pretty much it. You just set them up, and they then become a place that you can go to and experiment with newer features. So that's the first bit I wanted to show you. I'll just quickly pause and check the chat. Yeah, spend more time in your sandbox, scale. It is something I'd like to look into, Connor, is the guardrails in place for each of those different layers. And I think maybe it's something we should explore in a blog post and just unpack that a little bit. So that said, I won't set one up here, but what you will see is here's one I've made earlier. So I've got a new developer environment. It's type developer. It's in the United States. Okay, so that's point one that I wanted to share with you. Just bear with me. So I mentioned about going and explore it. Now, typically, what I would do to explore Power Virtual Agents, and probably if you're on the Teams licensing with Power Virtual Agents, this is what you might have done. I'll just pull this across here. You might be inclined to go and play with Power Virtual Agents via the Teams interface. And given that not many people use Power Virtual Agents, this might not be that familiar with you, so I'll show you what I do. So in my apps here, I've got an app called Power Virtual Agents. If you don't have it, you can generally get it via the apps list here. And there you go. So again, there is a little bit of a caveat on that in order to get access to this app, you need your Teams admin to have allowed you to get at that app. But that said, we have access to it. So very often, if I want to create a chatbot, to Connor's point, I'll come here. And I'll go, well, yeah, I might create a chatbot. I might do vacation booking. But in terms of the chatbots we've created, you'll probably see by the fact that we haven't got that many, we don't use it very often.
Make your Teams full screen so we can see it.
I can. Yes, there you go. Cheers, Connor. So we don't use it that often. But then I happened across this, the new studio experience. And really what that is talking about is this is what Microsoft have announced in the business applications launch event. They're very much gearing the Power Virtual Agents to be an entity in and of itself with its own capabilities that you can then bring back into Teams. So what do I mean by that? I mean that what I'm going to show you, you don't get at via this interface. You get at it by clicking, for now, click the Try It Now button. I'll take you through this process, but it lands you in a place that I want to just go and play with. It lands you at something called go via this. You start the free trial if you wish to. You'll notice that I've already got a free trial set up, so it's irrelevant. But you land in this place called web.powerva.microsoft.com. This is the new canvas. This is where the good stuff is going to start to happen. And the reason that I showed you that developer thing is depending where your Power Platform environment is up here, you may not see what I'm about to show you. So to see what I'm going to show you, create that developer environment, or at least go to a US environment that's got the kind of the preview capabilities I'm about to show you. For example, if I clicked across to Connor's test environment here, the capabilities I'm about to show you don't exist yet. So as with all these things in terms of licensing and in terms of what you've got access to, a little bit of a caveat, but I think a safe way to do it is to go in via the developer environment option. So here's the good stuff. You asked me earlier, Connor, I sent you a chat bot and I said that chat bot's trained on not only website data, but our data. And you said, how did you build that? And what I'm going to show you now is the capability of building a chat bot. And I think it's in less than 5 steps that I can give to you all on this call that you can ask some questions of that are specifically tailored to Power Platform type questions that we've answered in our Power Platformer blog space. So we've got dozens and dozens of blogs answering questions there. Up until now, my knowledge was, or to my knowledge, it would have been quite complex to train a bot to give it to people to allow them to access the content here through a bot interface. So let's just have a look at how simple it's become. So I'm going to create a bot. And if there are some lags in this, so if it does kind of time out or we get some problems, I will go to one I created earlier. But I'm going to call this Power Platformer. Now, the use case I'm sharing here is that I'm going to train within a couple of clicks this bot to answer questions intelligently using ChatGPT-like responses, which just blew me away. So I'm going to call it Power Platformer, choose a language, that's irrelevant, but here's the important bit. And this is the bit that if you've not got the right kind of environment, the developer environment, you won't be able to put this in. That's your indicator. Public website. Bit of a caveat here, the flatter the website, meaning the less drill through you have to do to get content, the better. Just so happens we've laid ours out in quite a flat way structurally. Paste it in there. What I'm really doing here is I'm saying, I want you to create me a bot that in the absence of any other tutoring, any other flows that I'm going to give you, any other structure I'm going to give you, will by default be able to intelligently respond to a question if it can find an answer on that website anywhere. And the beauty of this is it seems to happen quite quickly. So a few little bits and bats there. We won't go into that. There's nothing much to worry about there. So click create.
So Jags just says, can you use a OneDrive folder link?
Well, I'm going to come on to that in a minute, because that's where I just started shaking my head going, no, really? This is fantastic. So hold that thought, Jags. A very good thought. Right. So you asked me earlier, Connor, how difficult was it to set that chatbot up that you shared with me? And that was as difficult as it was. I've done 2 things. I'm going to do 3, and I'm going to show you a little bit in a minute. But
that's a bit surprising. I was expecting the use of connections to be made and custom.
Honestly, it's just
custom HTTP and stuff like that. So
it's insane, right? No, so there's a little. I'm deliberately stalling now because behind the scenes there's clearly some processing going. You saw this button here go green. Now that generally says to me it's got enough information from the website to be able to answer stuff. But first thing I'm going to show you is I am going to go into how this works a little bit, because I found it quite intriguing just lifting the surface. So I'm just going to start a chat with my chatbot. How can I help you? I want to learn about Power Platform. So this is the reality of it. You will get some weird answers back. You will have to reset the bot, but it will start to do well. Okay, so it's been quite good straight off the bat. So I just said I want to learn about the Power Platform. I've done nothing else, literally nothing else. And it started to give me some contextual information based on my question. We won't read it, but it's also, and I love this, give me a link to the Power Platform website. So it's taken me to a blog post, which, okay, that's probably not the one I would want to get in this case. But it's beginning to think about, or not think, that's not really what's happening here. It's beginning to join patterns of my question to content I've only given it via a link.
So is this using, in terms of its responses, is this using only our powerplatformer.com data, or is it using a conjunction of both the powerplatformer.com and the OpenAI ChatGPT services that are out there as well,
Okay.
or Copilot as such, if you like? Is it using a conjunction of both, or is it just using the prompts that you've given it to use?
So with the non-extensive testing I've done, Connor, my belief is, and you can see that with the references it gives you, because it tends to be quite good with exposing its references. I believe it is only surfacing what I've given to it. It is not doing a generic Copilot search, for example, which would be out to the internet, because if it was doing that, it would give me back more content than I'm seeing here. So my belief is it's really only surfacing what I've given to it as knowledge. And the reason I'm saying that, sorry, go on.
A good way to test it then would be to ask it something non-related to the powerplatformer.com, and let's see if it because I'm just trying to figure out whether, because obviously, like, it's nice that it's obviously giving you the references and it's showing you the context of the site, but it's nice in the way that, for example, I don't think we've ever written a blog post on what the actual Power Platformer is, and that it consists of those 4 things. So I'm interested to see where it's getting that information from, which my assumption would be. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, Connor. To my knowledge, and I'd like to do more reading on this, Microsoft have got very much a stance that they want to come across with this technology that it's not able to expand beyond the boundaries that you set. Now, that's not to say I've set any boundaries. I'll come on to the boundaries I have set, but my belief is that what it's doing is it's working within the parameters that it can work. Typically, to your original point, what would happen? I'll roll right back for a minute, then we're going to come back into this space because there's some really interesting things to show. Typically, the way that a bot works is it's very procedural. You'll have a set of topics. Let me just show you this, actually. This is quite interesting to learn. I'm just going to click that track between topics button up there. What it will typically do, and I'll just click this reset button here, is it will, in a procedural fashion, go through the topics that you've defined for it, using the pathways that you've defined for it, and get to a point where it can either answer the question with the information you've provided it, which typically used to be within entities, which are tables, or in your other pathways, or what it will do is it will fall back to what it's called an escalation route. And the way you implement these bots is you tend to train it to escalate into a human being. So that's how you get around it not knowing things. But I think all we've done here is we've expanded this bubble of knowledge, information that it can access via a particular topic. And I'll just show you this. I'll show you how it works. So if you click track between topics and you go hi, what you will see is the topic that it's actually dropped into, and you can see all the different topics it's got access to. If I was to click back on topics, I'll just show you those. You've got these default ones. There's some lessons. You've got system topics. So it will only work within the parameters you've given it, Connor, is my belief. So let me just go on.
So I have one other question on the whole setup phase. Obviously, you plugged in the powerplatformer.com into that box right at the beginning. Can you provide it with multiple sources of information?
Hold that thought. Yeah, I'm going to show you that when I get to the next one. It's exactly where my brain went when I first saw it. I went, that's quite good. What else can I do? So here's what's happening. I've said hello. It's gone into the greeting topic. It's listening out for trigger phrases. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want to learn about the Power Platform. But I'm going to be a bit more specific. I'm going to, because I know you've written a blog post about this. I want to learn about unmanaged versus managed environments. Let's see what it does with that. Now, these are a thing in the Power Platform. They're worth looking into. Okay, so it's found the blog post, funny enough, that I know Connor wrote. But if you notice there, what it's done is it's tracked across to this conversational boosting, that says, topic. Now, when I say tracked across, All it's done is it's skipped from one flow to another flow. It's like a parent-child flow that's taking place. And you'll see here the trigger for this bit of the Power Virtual Agent is it doesn't really understand your intent. So therefore, it goes to this new action, create generative answers. And it's this where the magic is happening, because that data source I put in at the very start, all that's done is it's declared a data source. If I just click edit, it's put me a data source in there. Now, it's used it. And then when I've finished with this data source, if I say thanks very much, it'll pop and track to another topic. It'll go to the completion topic. But this is where the good stuff lies. I think, Jag, you asked about OneDrive. Now, at the moment, you can see here, and I'm sure this will change, you can choose up to 4 public websites, 4 internal SharePoint sites to create dynamic content. So how cool is that? You can have a SharePoint. Now, I've not tested this, but you could potentially have a SharePoint document library. Not sure it'll do that. Probably would. It might need to be a list that it will just scan down. So imagine you have a list with your knowledge base in it. Give it the link. Let it work it out. It'll expand its knowledge. And the other thing that you can do is, let me find out where it is. It's not there. It is. Let's just go back. Right. So there is another thing that you can do, which is really, really cool. Let me just go and try and find it.
Just while you're finding that, I'm also
Here it is.
interested to kind of see what the sort of limitations are in terms of how much data can be processed. I mean, obviously the Power Platformer, compared to many sites, is a fairly small site. It's very textual, so there's a lot of content for it to kind of go off and find. Like you say, it's quite flat as well. So I'm curious to see if you was to say, for example, plug in a much larger site, for example, I don't know, something like YouTube, for example, or something that's going to have much more content and many more kind of like much more of a matrix of data to kind of consume and to get responses from. What the sort of implications of that's going to be, whether we're going to see lag during the setup, whether there'll be lag during the responses, because obviously there's a lot of compute power that's going to have to go into
there is
into finding these resources. I'm interested to see that.
There is, yeah, and it's a really good point. Yeah, Jan's just made. What have you pointed at Wikipedia? And I think this is why, at the moment, my exploration certainly, and the documents that you read seem to suggest that this is early, right? This is baby steps. They want you to keep it. They want you to keep the content flat, because I guess that's where the compute power comes. If it has to start to go and ingest data from multiple layers down, you are really starting to get into that challenge. Now, Jag, I'll come on to the licensing in a moment, because that is a really interesting one. And I have a few observations to share exactly there. As you'll see, we've got the pricing plans to come on to. But just to circle back on that, how much data, it does feel somewhat limited right now. That's the truth of it. It feels like, for example, what we would love to do is we'd love to point it at a catalog site that we've got. Just bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to find the link for it, because I'd like to do a quick test with you all. If you'll just bear with me, I did produce the link somewhere. There it is. So I showed you I'll just recap on this. That topic that I showed you sits in the system group, and it's conversational boosting. Inside conversational boosting, you've got data sources. Inside data sources, you've got public websites, and you've got SharePoint sites, and also OpenAI services on your data. Now, I've not explored that personally, but there's some opportunities there. But that said, that's all things that you can add to the mix. If you want to go and generically create from the get-go, you can go back to this AI capabilities, and you can add things in from the get-go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add another quick website in. So this is a catalog of all the content that we have on the Academy. So we've now got that. We've now got knowledge about the Power Platform. But another thing I want to add is I want to just tweak the way that it considers the data. And you've got some options here. I'm going to keep it being quite high content moderation. Now, in the language of AI, my belief is that what we're doing here is we're setting what they call the temperature for AI. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with AI at all, but they build these large language models based upon certain parameters that you give to them, and you can ask them to be quite broad, quite creative. What that really means is don't worry too much about the connections you're making, just make them. Or you can build them to be super clinical, in which case you give it a very cold temperature, which says only get stuff which really definitely has a pattern match according to your parameters. So this is about how restrictive or how broad you want it to be, and you can change that depending on your use case. But another piece that you can add in, and I love this, we've got a folder full of ebooks from the summits. I know nothing about SPFX. I'm going to be completely honest with you, but we've got a great ebook by a guy called Bill Ayres. I'm just going to pop it in, and I'm going to ask my chatbot about SPFX, see what it knows about it. Again, you've got limits. So to your point, Connor, I think right now we are really limiting this. We are really not spending Microsoft's money too much. That said, I may as well come on to it now. That's potentially, Jag, where the numbers that you pull out correctly sit. When you look at doing what I'm demonstrating and publishing this bot to a website, this is your kind of ballpark figure. It determines sessions is a start of a chat until you finish the completion action. So it's like £164 in British money to do that. I am going to show you something because I don't think it'll work long term, but I've been able to get this particular chatbot working in our Teams channel, which is quite interesting. But I suspect it will be due to the trial that I've got, and it will close when the trial closes. But we'll have to try it, Connor, and see if publishing a chatbot avoids this if you're using Teams, because Power Virtual Agents and Teams is fine. It's when you're starting to get into this new canvas that I think the costs come. So let me just quickly go back to there. Again, I just stalled a little bit because I wanted to let it ingest this thing. And I'm going to say, I know Bill Ayres' document has a little bit about the Graph API. So I'm going to ask it some questions. Can I use the Graph API to access email? See what it says. Now, what I'm expecting is I've not trained it on this. I've not given. I don't want to leave. Don't leave. Okay. So again, it's found stuff in that document, and you saw how quick that was. I think that's pretty good. That's pretty quick to start to ingest documents on a very narrow use case. But it's given me some information. Yes, you can use it to send, retrieve, manage emails. So even give me the citation from the document. I mean, I just looked at that. I thought there's potential here for something that could be really good. So that's how to construct the bot. You've seen me drag and drop and not do anything other than let's just leave that page. I probably should have saved that. Anything other than configure a few settings. To me, that's just bonkers. How easy that process is now. So imagine if you've got a knowledge base in SharePoint. This question around OneDrive, Jag, I'm not sure. We would have to think about that, because to my knowledge, a document library would be potentially surfacing something which you might also have in OneDrive. It depends on the architecture of that data. I'd like to try that to see if we can surface stuff that's sat in a OneDrive library, surfaced through SharePoint somewhere. I don't know. Is the simple answer to that one. Interesting. Thanks, James. So James is great for finding stuff for us. So yeah, we can stick that link in. So here's the thing, and here's the beauty of it. If you want to start to explore use cases for this kind of capability, let me just remember now where I find it. If you'll just bear with me, there is a link that I'd like to give you all. I've just got to find it. Oh, it's in the publishing. Okay, so the last little bit of this that I wanted to share with you, they have made some strides. Publishing a bot into Teams used to be a little bit difficult. It's getting easier. So you've got this concept of where do you want this bot to be published, and again with that 160 odd pounds per month, if your need is to publish to a website, for example, it's become much easier. What I will do, in fact, is I'll just come out of there. Let's go back. I'm just going to click on this, and I'm going to give you all the links so you can go and play with this. You can see what answers you can come up with. Feel free to train your own bot on our Power Platform or website and have a play. And equally, that catalog website that I showed you. Let me just go to the demo website. It's going to work.
Just, I'm not sure if you'll know this. I'm going to ask it anyway. So you know how there was a list of places where you can publish this Power Virtual Agent chatbot?
Yeah.
Is there a way to create your own APIs? Do you know, to be able to perhaps put these in places that aren't on that list of places that you've got?
Yeah, don't know, Connor. I'm thinking out loud on this. I'm going to say you probably have to go through. I don't know. I really don't know. No, I don't know. My instinct is saying you could probably do this via the Graph API, but I don't know, Connor. I really don't. It feels like they're using the Power Virtual Agents to surface what effectively is the OpenAI, the Azure OpenAI functions, I believe. So that's the way you'd probably go, but I don't know. Could you surface your bot in another way? Don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you was to say put it on Instagram, for example, or the TikTok Messenger or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, my guess will be we're going to see more channels open up here. I mean, you see, we've got I don't even know what Telegram is, but we've got some Facebook options there. That link is really all we're doing is we've got embed links for this chatbot. So if you were to, and feel free, go and have a click on that website. It doesn't cost us anything. It's a free training website, but go and have a little play and see what questions you can chuck at it. It'd be very interested if anybody does actually, whether we can get any analytics on what questions get asked of the bot. In fact, there you go, analytics. I could probably see what's happening with my bot. But that's really all I wanted to surface. It is a very light touch surface. I appreciate that, and probably more questions I've got and Connor's got than the answers that are there naturally. The one thing I do just want to quickly do, I probably won't. I won't go as far as to link this up to Teams, because my belief is that yes, you can turn it on in Teams, which is what I'm going to do there. I was able to just give Connor a link earlier, and we had a little play in a chat, and he could interact with the chat bot using a link that I just copied there, and it basically installed the bot for him using that app in Teams. My suspicion is that's still tied to the license for the chatbot rather than tied to the Teams license, if that makes sense, because Teams will allow you to do certain Power Virtual Agent capabilities within that standard license, if you like. But my suspicion is that we'll get cut off at some point because I've not paid for the license for this. I think that makes sense. But yeah, that's how easy it is to pop it into Teams. Do you want to demo that bit, Connor? We've got 5 minutes.
Yes.
So I'm going to give Connor a link. But what you'll probably want to do, Connor, is just share your Teams chat so you can show people what that looks like from the point where I've just given that link to Connor. So I don't know if you want to just steal the screen.
So hopefully you can see my screen. So I can say we've got a link here from John. So I'll go and click the link. And it opens up very much like how you would see new apps being added to Teams channels and Teams chats, etc. So you get prompted with essentially what the application is that you're about to add, with all of its information that John may have or may not have filled out, along with the permissions. And just like with any other app, we just go ahead and press add. And what this will do is it now adds it to Teams, and you can see it down here on my left. So I can right click, and I should usually be able to pin that. So I'm not sure why I can't pin that, but
yeah, sometimes it lags a little bit, but yeah.
So yeah, I can obviously now go ahead and use this, and as a separate individual. So I could say, for example, I mean, components is something I've been writing about in the Power Platformer. So I could go and ask something about components. So I could say, what is a component designer?
Yeah, that's an interesting one to try it on, isn't it?
See if it grabs the context. So component design is someone who's comfortable with Power Apps formulas and understands development concepts. Yeah, I mean that is, I actually remember writing that. That is something that I wrote as part of that blog. So yes, it is surfacing directly from the blog, and we can see the references here as well. In each of these, I'm interested to see how that opens up.
Yeah, I mean, it'll just bring you straight to the page. It's quite a nice way to surface if you do have a public-facing website. I guess an internal website as well. So long as it's flat, it's quite a nice way to surface that content. But I am going to say this, it definitely must come with a huge caveat of cost. And I know that's going to be a big barrier for a lot of people. It is for us. We wouldn't use this, just purely and simply because of the cost problem that it would create us. Now, I am going to explore to see if we can get around that problem. And it is a huge caveat. And the challenge is that we know, because yes, we're an organization that do specialize in the Power Platform, but we know there are tools out there. We use one called Chatbase. Okay, now Chatbase is very similar designer interface. I think it costs us £20 a month to surface a chatbot which does exactly the same thing. It does it on our public facing website. So if you come to academy.collab365.com and say, what kind of training have you got? It will ingest what we've got and it will give you some pretty good answers. So I think it depends on your use case as to whether you would use this. If you're paying for a knowledge base solution in your business, this is where I can see it might start to make sense. It might start to be something you could explore. You know, you might be paying an extra license for a whole host of storage that actually you may no longer need. So I'm really interested to see where it goes in the future. Those prices, Jag, that you quoted there, they also, another big caveat, they've come down from something like $2,000 per month. They're on a special right now. The moment that goes up, it starts to make 0 sense. But I get it totally. It's an enterprise scale tool that they're pitching. I'd love if it was able to be accessed by the small to medium enterprises like us. So there you go. That is John's demo for today. I hope that was of some use. I hope it was interesting.